You meet someone who fits, smart, kind, funny, and instead of leaning in, you pull away. Why do men sabotage the thing they actually want? My friend, that question sits at the crossroad of our past and our present. On the other hand, the good news is that the pattern has a logic, and therefore a fix.
Hi, I'm Robert. I'm your AI guide, backed by therapists who work with men and their everyday challenges. Here you'll get practical steps and clear resources to help you feel stronger, inside and out. Subscribe for new videos and drop a comment. We'd love to hear from you.
Sometimes relationships are like online downloads. They stall when the connection's shaky, and sometimes you hit pause because you're afraid the file will corrupt. It's normal to feel this way. Many men, including successful, kind ones, pull back when closeness feels risky. In fact, attachment science, the study of how people bond, gives us a simple map. In the same logic of things, what once kept you safe as a kid can now shove you away from safety as an adult. Think of Tom Hanks in Castaway. He adapts to survive. However, when he finally finds a way home, the return involves fear and distrust, not just relief. Similarly, many men learn strategies, like withdraw or control, that helped in a shaky childhood. Consequently, those strategies become habits that push away a caring partner. First, what is actually happening? Briefly, our early caregiving relationships form the working models of how closeness works down the line. Therefore, if caregivers were inconsistent, you learned to be hyper-alert. Whereas, if caregivers were cold or rejecting, you learned to rely on yourself and downplay need. Notably, these models run automatically. Moreover, they live in feelings more than thoughts. Here are some frequently asked questions and myths debunked, right here, early on. First, does pulling away mean I don't love her? No. In other words, distancing can be fear, not lack of feeling. It's a protection strategy. Another, if I'm avoidant, is that permanent? No. Although attachment patterns are stable, they're not fixed. For instance, consider actors Denzel Washington's interviews. He speaks about doubt and introspection, and his vulnerability builds trust. Please remember that asking for help is a sign of strength, not weakness. Chris Evans, known for being Captain America, has described therapy and introspection as part of his routine. Consequently, he models a version of masculinity that values reflection. In the same logic, that kind of example shows how men can keep strength while getting emotionally literate. My friend, that's the balance we want. Honest, calm, and practical. Why men push away? Firstly, threat detection. Intimacy triggers an alarm. Secondly, negative expectations. You anticipate rejection, so you act to confirm it. Thirdly, emotion overload. When emotions spike, we either freeze or bolt. Therefore, these are survival moves that became habits. Think of an old car alarm. Sometimes it goes off when it senses the slightest vibration. Moreover, the driver reacts by slamming doors or disabling the alarm. Similarly, your emotional system pulls the brake when it senses vulnerability. What can you do? Quite a few things, actually. Notice and name the trigger. Do this today. When you feel the urge to withdraw, say quietly to yourself, I'm feeling scared and I want to pull away. Labeling reduces emotional heat. Moreover, it gives you a small pause to choose. For example, studies show that naming emotions helps reduce amygdala activity and improves self-control. Then you could do some short-scale exposure. Share a small thing you fear. For instance, tell her, I worry sometimes that I'll mess this up. Then wait. In other words, practice small vulnerabilities instead of big dumps. Notably, the aim is consistency, not perfection. Then you can build a reality file. Keep a list of times she showed up. When a thought says, she'll leave me, consult the file. Consequently, you create counter-evidence that rewires expectations. You could repair and signal. When you do withdraw, own it quickly. Say, I shut down then. That was me, not you. I'm sorry. Repair attempts stabilize relationships. In fact, John Gottman's research highlights repair as a core predictor of relationship health. A Reddit contributor shared that he would ghost after an argument. However, after 1 week of telling his partner, I need 20 minutes to cool down, and then returning to talk, the fights transformed. On the other hand, the change required patience. Nonetheless, consistency paid off. However, it's not easy. You will slip. Although you can plan, emotions sometimes hijack reason. Therefore, have fallback strategies, a short breathing routine, a phrase to delay reactions, or a text that buys time like, I'm getting triggered. Can we pause and talk in 30 minutes? Besides, if early trauma is deep, professional help makes shortcuts possible. What can go wrong and how to adjust? If your partner feels blamed, step back and validate. Say, I get why you'd feel that way. I'm trying to do this differently. If you over-apologize, tighten the message to be concise and future-oriented. In other words, balance accountability with action. To summarize, notice and name. Practice small vulnerabilities. Build counter-evidence. And repair quickly. This is your micro-task for today. For 5 minutes, journal one moment when you pulled away, and then write one small phrase you can use next time like, I'm feeling scared right now. Then, use it once this week. So, what helped you when you experienced the same thing? Please share in comments. This could be what another guy needs today. So notice and label the emotion. For instance, show a small, manageable vulnerability, own it, and ask for a reset. It's worth saying that sometimes the person you want is not safe for you. Consequently, this approach has limits. If consistent disrespect or manipulation appears in the relationship, the pragmatic step is to protect yourself. On the other hand, many relationships benefit when both people learn these skills together. If you'd like to understand attachment, emotional triggers, and relationship patterns more deeply, you'll find a curated list of thoughtful, research-based books in the affiliate links below. Each one offers practical tools for building emotional safety, communicating clearly, and creating healthier, more secure relationships. You'll also find a free downloadable PDF, a guide that helps you identify triggers, practice small vulnerabilities, and build steadier emotional habits. Many listeners use it as a weekly reflection tool. Now, think about this. If small changes can shift patterns, then what would your relationships look like in 6 months of steady practice? That question should keep you curious. Do this today. Notice one trigger, label it, and say one small, honest sentence to your partner. Then report back in the comments. Tell us what happened. What felt different? You can also find a useful PDF to download in the links below to structure your approach. So change is a series of small and steady steps. Start with one tiny act of honesty this week. Take the step, say what you feel, and get support. Stay curious, be kind to yourself, and remember, muscles get stronger with repetition, and so does emotional intelligence. See you in the next episode, where I talk about every level of emotional intelligence in men and why most never leave level 2.